This is purely a journalistic point of view. Nothing more has been said in this video other than that of which has been reported by various media sources and backed up with sources seen at the end of this video.
Recently, the WWE announced its first women's battle royal, christening it the fabulous Moolah Battle Royal, hoping to honour the WWE Hall of Famer much as it did with Andre the Giant and the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. However, a fan backlash led to the WWE dropping Moolah's name from the event. The question some fans are asking is, why would the WWE drop the name of a woman it has seemed to embrace for decades? Although the WWE has lionized Moolah's accomplishments, rumours have persisted for decades about Moolah's practices towards her trainee wrestlers. Join us now as Behind the Titantron examines the legacy of Mary Lillian Ellison, fabulous or frightening. South Carolina native Mary Lillian Ellison was born on the 22nd of July 1923. The youngest of 13 children, Mary was the only daughter in the Ellison brood and lost her mother to cancer when she was only 8 years old. Growing up around males, Ellison easily adapted to life as a tomboy. She discovered her love for professional wrestling when her father took her to matches to spend quality time with her away from her brothers. Young Mary knew right then how she wanted to spend her life when she saw women's wrestling for the first time. However, her father disapproved, so she eventually ran off and eloped with one Walter Carroll. Their daughter Mary, who would also become a wrestler, was born, but the marriage was short-lived. In her memoir, The Fabulous Moolah, First Goddess of the Squared Circle, she recalled her disdain for the patriarchal system ruling society, and with it, wrestling. When I was coming up, it was unheard of for a lady wrestler to be strong and independent. We were the valets for the men's stars, and we had men promoters, other wrestlers, husbands, or boyfriends telling us exactly what to do. I did what I wanted to do ever since I was a little girl and defied my dear daddy's wishes by entering the ring. Her wrestling career would show her disdain for the system, with her often refusing to go along to get along. She approached promoter Billy Wolf, who controlled women's wrestling with an iron grip, but didn't last long when she rebuffed his sexual advances. She was dating wrestler Johnny Long, who introduced her to Jack Pfeffer, a New York promoter. Legend has it that when Pfeffer asked her why she was wrestling, her response was, "For the money, I want to wrestle for the moolah." Thus was Mary's ring name created. Her first break came when she worked as Nature Boy Buddy Rogers' valet, under the stage name Slave Girl Moolah. She provided help for Rogers when called upon in the ring, but in her autobiography, she claims Rogers' constant propositions for a sexual relationship led to her ending their business relationship. Moolah had burnt 2 important bridges, leaving her wrestling career in doubt. Despite her setbacks, she persevered, and on the 18th of September 1956, Moolah won her first world championship when she overcame 12 other women in a battle royal, eliminating Joyce Grable to become the world women's champion. As was standard for the time, there were multiple claimants to the world's title, and while not everyone recognized her as a champion, this would change over time. However, promoter Vince McMahon Sr. rechristened her the Fabulous Moolah, launching his family's long business relationship with her. The NWA eventually recognized Moolah as its World Women's Champion, and she began a long run as champion, defending the title internationally. Like many wrestling claims, Moolah's reign was exaggerated, with her listed as never being defeated for the championship. Whilst that was not true, Moolah did hold the belt for extended periods, and her grip was akin to a stranglehold. 1983 saw Vince McMahon approach Moolah about selling her championship to the WWF. At the time, Vince was intent on expanding his father's promotion into a national one, and he had ambitious plans for women's wrestling. One such plan involved utilizing pop singer Cyndi Lauper in an angle where her proxy wrestler would take on Captain Lou Albano's proxy. This led to the 23rd July 1984 brawl to end it all, where Lauper's wrestler Wendy Richter defeated Albano's wrestler Moolah for the WWF Women's Championship. Ironically, Moolah would be called upon to shoot on Richter and get the title back when McMahon's clash with Richter called for what is now known as the original Screwjob, a match where Moolah, disguised as the masked Spider Lady, won the WWF Women's Championship from Richter. During the Attitude Era, Moolah's career enjoyed a resurgence when she began appearing in comedy segments, often alongside fellow women's wrestler Mae Young. These segments led to a new generation of fans being introduced to Moolah's work. Along the way, Moolah won the WWF Women's Championship at the age of 76, with her last match occurring on the 15th September 2003 when she defeated Victoria on Raw. In their book, Sisterhood of the Squared Circle, The History and Rise of Women's Wrestling, Moolah's career was summed up in this paragraph. Respected by her allies and feared by her enemies, Ellison was a master politician and a shrewd, calculating businesswoman. As an in-ring competitor, she was widely considered the most well-known female wrestler in the game for 30 years. Her career as a trainer and promoter extended even further. While we know of Moolah's wrestling legacy, what of her legacy behind the scenes? Moolah's longevity in the ring and her reputation as someone able to hold her own in an industry driven by men inspired respect. The WWE Hall of Famer always seemed to be welcomed by the McMahon family. However, at the same time, she has drawn criticism for using the same exploitative tactics used by men with her own wrestlers. These questionable practices towards students and wrestlers in her employ range from financial exploitation to sexual exploitation, including prostitution and pornography. A year after Moolah's death in 2007, famed women's wrestler Penny Banner blasted Moolah's legacy after she felt the wrestling star was being prepared for sainthood. Let's get this out of the way first, so I don't have to dance around the subject. Moolah was a pimp. Moolah would send out her half-trained underage female wrestlers to photo shoots that would be by the standards of today be considered pedophilia and pornography, renting them out to promoters in bulk, with the understanding that the girls would have sex with the promoter and all the wrestlers on the roster who wanted them. Promoters liked free sex, but what they also liked is for boys not to go outside looking for it and possibly running into trouble. Sex on the road with a steady and pliant group of semi-attractive women in return for money. That is what Moolah offered. The women that were sent out on these tours were not told of this agreement ahead of time. They found out about it on the road. Those that refused to have sex with promoters and wrestlers were raped. Although the fabulous Moolah ran a well-known wrestling school, there were always questions raised about how much she taught. Critics have argued that Moolah had others do the training while she collected the proceeds. To be certain, a number of successful wrestlers trained at Moolah's school, but how much they learned from Moolah remains in doubt. Through the years, Moolah developed a reputation as someone quick to financially exploit wrestlers and sabotage their careers if they looked to threaten her spot at the top of the mountain. When 6'2" journalist Janine Mojeth met a wrestler at a party, he caught her attention by regaling her with the easy life of a wrestler. She ditched her reporter's notebook and began training with Moolah. With her height, colourful mohawk, and imposing figure, her character Mad Maxine had potential. At one point, Maxine was considered for a spot on the WWF Saturday morning cartoon, Hulk Hogan's Rock and Wrestling. But according to her, Moolah maneuvered her way onto the show instead. When Maxine learned Moolah was taking 50% of her pay, she left the WWF. African-American wrestler Susie Mae McCoy was allegedly exploited as well, earning only a portion of what she earned as the successful African-American grappler Sweet Georgia Brown. In a 2006 interview, a family member recalled, "She thought that's what you've got to do to survive. She knew she was being used. She knew from the beginning that she was being lied to, but she was a black woman in the 50s. McCoy's story is just one of several allegations against Moolah. As bad as Moolah's alleged financial exploitation was, Maxine supports the other stories of Moolah allegedly pimping her female wrestlers. Moolah did send girls out to this guy in Arizona and pimped them out. I actually spoke to him on the plane and asked him what he was looking for. He said, if I'm spending all this money, you know what I want. That was part of Moolah's way of making money. She was just a bad person. Moolah didn't have a good bone in her body." In the film documentary Lipstick and Dynamite, wrestler Judy Grable said, "She was trained by him, so I guess you know she got it from him. What goes around comes around. She got it done to her, and she was doing it to everyone else." A common theme to the allegation is a combination of financial and sexual exploitation. Moolah's female charges were allegedly kept in debt, making it easier for other exploitation. For example, women's wrestler Ida Mae Martinez alleged some women would not get paid until they slept with promoters. Although Moolah was not directly involved, the correlation between the women's wrestlers' financial straits and their exploitation is easy to see. Wrestler Sandy Parker trained at Moolah's camp and noted, "Everybody knew that if you weren't on Lillian's good side, you got crappy bookings. I wasn't on her good side because I wouldn't do what she wanted me to do. That was one of the reasons I never worked Madison Square Garden, because every time the bookings came up, I'd be on her bad side. As far as I'm concerned, I could wrestle just as good as Tony Rose, Donna Christanello, or any one of those girls who were on Ellison's good side." The tag team of Leilani Kai and Judy Martin, aka the Glamour Girls, would later claim Moolah sabotaged their momentum in the WWF during their much acclaimed program with the Japanese tag team, the Jumping Bomb Angels. Not everyone has vilified her. Retired Hall of Fame wrestler Joyce Grable discussed her time with Moolah. "Well, Moolah trained me in 71, and I wrestled for her until 1984, and I was a 4-time World Tag Team Champion, so I've been around a long time." Grable was interviewed about the allegations and had this to say, "Well, no, I've never experienced that, and all of the ones you've named, they're dead, so how could they be saying anything? Maybe the family, or just making it up. But as far as I was concerned, she never sent me to nobody. And hey, I had a good body back then. I was kind of pretty, long black hair, especially when I went to Puerto Rico, Mexico. If she was gonna pimp somebody out, I would have been number 1 on the list." In regards to the allegations about Moolah providing drugs to her wrestlers, I never recall anything on that. Moolah was 110% against any types of drugs. If she found out you smoked marijuana, she would X you off. Told you, "You can't do that." She told you how to dress when you went to arenas, how to act like a lady. And as far as I'm concerned, she was a little stiff on some things, but she was my boss. I had to do what she told me to do. I had to go places. Japan, Australia, New Zealand. But hey, this is what the business is about. She would go on to comment about the allegations Moolah pimped out her wrestlers to men. In fact, she wanted us to stay away from the guy wrestlers. When one of us were dating one of the guys, she was so afraid we were gonna marry him, go off with them, and then she would lose a top girl. And so she never promoted the girls and the guys getting together, or anyone. She was like, "You're on your own in that situation. But this is what I'd like for you to do." Did Moolah exploit her wrestlers, or was it a case of disgruntled wrestlers blaming her for their shortcomings? What could motivate Moolah to allegedly exploit women the same way she had been exploited? Consider these 2 options. The first from author Tim Hornbaker. Moolah, however, could have changed things by running an honest syndicate, training and booking women on the level. She could have broken the patterns established by Wolf. She chose not to. Maybe it was just too deeply ingrained. The second from former wrestler Mad Maxine, who believes she knows Ellison's motivation. She was an evil person. I understand why. She came from nothing, her mother died when she was just 8, and she was never going to be poor again. While Moolah's treatment of her wrestlers may never be known, there are questions about her legacy as a performer as well, with some believing the longtime women's champion was a limited worker who hurt the business. Dave Meltzer feels women's wrestling suffered during Moolah's dominance. During the period Moolah controlled women's wrestling, the popularity and the product didn't evolve. The women in the 1940s and the 1950s, even the late 1950s in some places like Florida, they were headlining the show. Meltzer is not alone in this criticism. Before her 2008 death, former AWA Women's Champion Penny Banner agreed, arguing, "The reason women's pro wrestling in North America was, and still in large part today, considered a joke, and just an opportunity to ogle at tits and asses, is largely in part thanks to the way Moolah trained her girls and how Moolah wrestled. Those that argue that women's wrestling was always like that, and Moolah did nothing to change it, are ignorant. In the 30s and 40s, female wrestling employed shooters, and they wrestled in the traditional sense of the term. Tits and asses were used to advertise and get them in the building, but the girls worked longer and more technically sound matches than today. The reason Japanese women's wrestling was light years ahead of North Americans is because of one person and one person only: Moolah. Mildred Burke, the original women's champion, popularized female wrestling in the world in the 30s. Japan, Canada, Mexico, and America can trace women's wrestling directly to her. She used a hard-hitting style, and outside of being an attractive woman, her matches were no different from the men's matches of her day. Mary Lillian Ellison's legacy remains controversial to say the least. Whether her reputation is fabulous, frightful, or something in between, the WWE relented when its WrestleMania 34 sponsor Snickers issued the statement, "We were recently made aware of the World Wrestling Entertainment Inc.'s decision to honor a former wrestler during the upcoming WrestleMania 34 event. As a principle-based business that has long championed creating inclusive environments that encourage and empower everyone to reach their full potential, this is unacceptable. We are engaging with the WWE to express our disappointment." The WWE's quest for mainstream corporate sponsors such as Snickers makes it obvious the company will avoid even the appearance of controversy. Whether wrestling's fabulous Moolah is worthy of condemnation, we will leave it to you to decide. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Behind the Titantron. Of course we have taken an unbiased approach to Moolah's career, but let us know what you think of Moolah in the comments down below. As always, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.